So this is going to be my first video. This is my first time doing something like this, and I just kind of wanted to start with a little bit of a disclaimer. Um, as you may have figured out because you got to this video is going to be about the Iliad by Homer. I want to start with the disclaimer that these are all my personal opinions and my personal interpretations of what I've read. I am in the process of reading the Iliad, and it is it's a lot of fun, but it's a bit challenging too. So with that, I also want to say that I'm reading the free version that you can find on Project Gutenberg. So if anyone wants to follow along, that's going to be the version. I know there are a lot of versions out there because it's an older text and it's much like Shakespeare and a lot of things from that era. It's very subject to interpretation. So once again, this is my interpretation of things. This is not necessarily gospel. I am not an English professor. I have a bachelor's in English and I work currently as a librarian. So I know a little bit, but please don't use these as your only source of information for the Iliad. And I definitely recommend, if you are interested in it, going ahead and going a little bit further afield. Maybe take a course. A lot of colleges cover this because it's such an important landmark in terms of literature, both English literature and world literature. So now that that's out of the way, and now that I've said probably 8 times that I am not a definitive source, we're going to go ahead and just jump right into this. Actually, no, we're not going to jump right into this. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the events that led up to the Iliad. The Iliad begins in the middle of the Trojan War. So those of you who are familiar with the Trojan War, you don't need any more information than you already have. But for those of you who aren't, or maybe those of you who just kind of think or maybe your sole source of reference is, the movie with Brad Pitt, we'll go ahead and we'll get a little bit further into that. So there's a lot of debate, and they still have not determined one way or the other whether the Trojan War actually happened. They do believe they have found the ruins of Troy, or as they refer to it sometimes in the story, Ilion. But it's not something they've been able to prove. I mean, there's nothing written there that says, "Hey, this was Troy, and we fought a war for 10 years." So that's the other thing. This story begins about roughly 9 years into the war. Those of you who are familiar with it, you know that the war took place, and it was supposedly 10 years long. That's something that gets covered a little bit more in depth in the Odyssey. And if this whole video thing is somewhat successful, then I'll probably go on to do the Odyssey as soon as I finish the Iliad. But let's see. So the Iliad again starts like almost at the end of the Trojan War. They've besieged Troy for 10 years now. Almost 10 years, sorry, 9 years. So let's back up a little bit further and we'll actually go into the story behind how the war starts. Again, this is a bit more mythology than anything we can actually prove. So, but because it's an important part of the story, and because in the story the gods are not only present, but they regularly interact with the other characters, and yeah, as you'll see as we get going into this, they get further and further and more involved in everything. So we'll start with the we'll start with the origin of the Trojan War. It supposedly originated from a quarrel between the goddesses Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Those of you who are not that familiar with Greek and Roman mythology, Hera, or Juno, as she became later known in Roman mythology, she was the goddess of she's basically the goddess of home and women and childbirth and that and all that's good stuff. Mostly though, her focus was on marriage. That was her big. That was sort of her claim to fame, which is kind of